But it is a blessing to be in a place where they say, "Hi, I got arrested with you." So when you offer lawyers for your auction, they're really needed in this kind of organization. I have been thinking about this this commemoration a great deal because it's the 10th commemoration. And I wrote something today about this, and I ended up calling it the good and the bad. We're aware of how we just fell back into old habits when these events occurred, but the key is the learning of the new things, which I actually, with the new generation, am feeling very hopeful about. This morning, my son, Jack, two boys are now 13. Hey, Jack, yesterday learned how to make little dogs from balloons, these balloon shaped, and he's made since last night, 50 of them. He's making them for everybody. And I said, Jack, how'd you learn to make it? He said, well, Dad, I just read a book and figured it out. And Dad, you too could make even better things than this. But you have to read a book. Like Scott said, we all remember where we were 10 years ago. I was home in D.C., getting ready to go to the office at Sojourners. I was listening to NPR, kind of a morning routine, getting dressed, and I heard about this plane. They thought at first a small plane, probably, crashed into the South Tower, and called downstairs to Joy, turn the TV on, something's happening. So then Joy and I, with our 3-year-old son Luke, watched the plane crash into the North Tower. And I remember my first reaction, and Joy reminded me of it a couple days ago. She said, remember when you said, this is very bad. This is going to be very bad. I didn't mean all the destruction that we later learned, how extensive that would be, the collapsing the towers and all the rest. What I sensed was this could do very bad things to our nation's soul. That was the first thought that I had about all of this. But then another part of our soul was revealed. I remember Joy and I several times were brought to tears by the stories afterwards, your story, your brother, pain and loss, but of first responders and ordinary people in the city who all of a sudden all became their brothers or their sister's keeper. You saw a whole city. I mean, I know New York. New York's a tough city. But New York became a place of care for their brothers and sisters. All across the country, we began to react differently, act differently, did things differently. And we saw, Luke and I, who was 3, now 13, watched the National Geographic's special this past week, and it documented again and again people giving their lives for complete strangers. So many first responders who didn't hardly even think before, they just gave their lives for strangers. Watching it again this week made me understand that our first response of people of faith and of no faith was indeed to overcome evil with good. That was our first response, to overcome evil with good. For a moment, the world's last remaining superpower felt vulnerable. Just for a moment. For the first time. Really? I remember people were running from downtown D.C. past our house in Columbia Heights, just running, not even know where they're going, just the fear of another plane coming and rumors and smoke billowing from the Pentagon. They were rushing and running, and Joey and Luke set up a little water station outside our front door to give you water as they came rushing by. People were feeling very vulnerable, which meant for the first time, so many Americans were feeling the way the rest of the world feels all the time. Scott, in El Salvador, in Tel Aviv, in Beirut, in my wife's hometown of London, in Belfast. All over the world, people have learned that to be human is to be vulnerable. It's just part of what it means to be a human being. But we had kind of missed that in this country, and all of a sudden we were vulnerable. The closer you get to being human. And we responded that way all over the country. And in the first few days after 9/11, because of that, America had the high ground. Le Monde, the French paper, hardly our fans most often, headlines were all Americans now. The world did not admire, the world did not identify with those who cruelly and murderously decided to take innocent lives in response to their real and perceived grievances. They were not being admired. Who was being admired were suffering Americans, and how that suffering led to service and even sacrifice on behalf of other Americans. And for a few days, a few moments, the world was admiring all of that. I was just thinking this week, there's something not to be missed that in our first response, instinctive first response, so many did respond that way, to overcome evil with good. This was a monstrous evil. And our response was to do good to each other. It's easy to forget that now because of what came next. What I was worried about. The response of official Washington in a very short time. Our response to terrorism would simply be defined as war. Our response to terrorism would be defined as war. A whole decade of war, which a long time ago took more innocent lives than ever died on 9/11. In response to our suffering, many others now in Afghanistan, Iraq, and around the world would suffer all in the name of our war on terrorism. And so we have this opportunity for deeper reflection, for deeper learning, for even the possibility of redirection. Because vulnerability always creates that opportunity. We had this moment of opportunity, but it eluded us because our leaders said, in effect, they were saying, we will erase your vulnerability. That's what they were saying. We will and can erase your feelings of being vulnerable. A demonstration of our superiority and our power.